Well, hello everyone.
Welcome.
Welcome to Trail Talk. If you have tried to get on Zoom, sorry, not available today. We're having technical difficulties, but you know what? You can't keep a good man down because we are live
We will
anyway.
get in one way or the other.
That's right. So we are excited to be with you guys today. We've got a really cool lesson. I really love these Oklahoma governor
I have some
lessons. Yeah.
a lot of things that you might have heard of.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We've got some kind of back looping things, some tying back in with some other lessons, but as kind of maybe seedy. That's one word I think of when I think of some of the first 10 that we talked about. Some were a little seedy, some were a little eccentric.
Yes.
Some were, pretty good guys. Some were prone to be influenced by organizations that are, I understand it's just showing part of me here. Does it help if you, back up the phone a little bit? Does that make it wider? We can talk louder. Can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah,
All right, sorry. Sorry for just having a portion of me on the screen there. Anyway, we're going to talk about Governors 11 through 15 today, and some interesting fellas. Yeah, some pretty prominent men. So I thought this was a kind of a crazy picture, but I felt like if this was one that was on
Canon.
Yes,
He doesn't know
exactly.
he's getting his photograph taken.
Yeah, and also, it's probably him in a very comfortable, natural kind of place, and so I thought it was a good picture to use.
Yeah.
Just kind of a picture at Leon Phillips, the man.
There you go.
Interesting, the C stands for chase, and I always think of chase as being kind of a more
New modern.
modern kind of name for someone, but
Are you gonna play around?
maybe it was a last name. You know how they do that?
Or it could have his mom's maiden name.
Right, yeah, something like that. I don't know, I didn't really chase that rabbit hole because sometimes I don't ever get back out. I didn't chase it, yeah. But anyway, he was the 11th governor of Oklahoma. He was born in 1890 in Missouri. But he lived basically his whole life. In 1892, his dad bought some land over by Clinton, which I thought was interesting. That was 1892 was in the midst of the land runs, but his dad bought land. So Clinton was
Already an established town.
uh-huh.
At that point.
So anyway, I just thought, so whoever had that land maybe paid for it up front, or maybe you could transfer. The title wasn't theirs yet, because the first land run was 89.
Well, it said that you could pay.
Yeah, and
You could
that's
pay early.
Yeah, so maybe someone paid for the title early,
Bought up
and
some land
and then they
and
could
made
sell
some
it
money.
off. Yeah. So anyway, and so he grew up over by Clinton, went to what's now Southwestern Oklahoma State University, my alma mater. Go Dogs. And then taught school in Custer County, which is where Clinton is actually the county seat, and Weatherford is in Custer County. Also, I know that from going to school up there. That's the only way. Yeah. And then he felt called to the ministry.
So then he went to the seminary at Epworth University.
Yeah, which is
Later,
now Oklahoma City.
University.
Yeah, university.
That was in 1909.
Yeah.
Or sorry, 1909.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1909
Yeah.
I needed that.
A couple of years later, he was like, nope.
This isn't fitting either.
Yeah. And maybe he liked cigars, and maybe that wasn't, really kind of something.
Right,
I don't
so
know.
he went from the ministry to study law.
Yeah, at the University of Oklahoma, and then came World War I. He served there.
He did finish his degree in law, though.
I did think it was interesting, though, that he was, and he had an education, but he was a private in the Army for the whole
He had
time.
a degree.
But he didn't have any kind of a rank
Right.
above, private. moves back, to Okemah and gets involved in politics, which is pretty much the same story with all these guys.
Right.
They get a law degree and then something draws them
Into the
into,
politics.
the political arena. And he was elected to the legislature in 1932, Speaker of the House, Democratic Minority Leader, which I thought was interesting. The Democratic Minority Leader, so does that mean the majority was Republicans? Which would be very strange for this time in Oklahoma history, yeah. So anyway, he was reelected, ran for governor in 1938 and won. And so he was governor for 4 years. Now remember, these are the days when a governor could only serve one term here in Oklahoma.
Right.
But he wanted he wanted court reform. That was kind of his big platform. He reorganized the Oklahoma Highway Commission, which I would so love to see what the highway system was like
Was
in
back then.
1939.
Yeah.
You know, wouldn't that be interesting?
I would guarantee it was not as complex as it is.
Right? Yeah. So anyway, he worked really hard to get a balanced budget, reorganizing and reducing the number of gasoline inspectors. I don't know what the gasoline inspection
I'm guessing
gig was,
a lot of
but
them.
yeah, that must have been
Right.
highly sought after occupation.
And then also helped to create the Oklahoma State Regents for higher education.
Right, which was important. I mean, that's something that's still around today, and people that's a very serious
Exactly.
position. But as a Democrat, he was very strongly opposed to the New Deal.
Mhm.
And so he switched parties for a bit.
Yeah, I did not like
Yeah, he
that
was
stuff.
very right-leaning,
Mhm.
as well, I don't know if I should say right-leaning, but he was more Republican-leaning in some things.
Right.
And anyway, so he was not, well, of course, he couldn't serve a second term.
Right, because he
But
already served.
after his term was over, I mean, people really liked what he did. He was made honorary chief of the Oto tribe, and he got to make the presentation of the Will Rogers statue at the Capitol.
Here in Washington.
And I have seen that. It's in the hall, it's not really in the Hall of Statues because that's a round room.
Mhm.
Every state is allowed to have 2 statues
To represent
to
their state.
represent their state. Our 2 statues are Will Rogers and Carl Albers. I believe Carl Albers is correct. But anyway, you know how we tell people not to touch
Yes.
the statues and things? There's a congressman from Oklahoma
Mhm.
who walks by the Will Rogers statue and touches it every day that he goes into the Capitol. And you can see where he touches it. So that is proof that,
Even those bronze,
yes,
big old statues,
yes,
monuments,
you can damage them. And I think that that's kind of a strange thing to do, but it's fact. He has told people that he does that.
I can see the representation in it maybe,
You
but.
know, yeah, Will Rogers was not a congressman or anything like that,
But maybe oh, that's my home state, I'm doing it for the people back home,
Yeah.
a reminder, I don't know.
this
Something
particular
different.
congressman is,
He's put on the white glove.
yeah, for sure. Anyway, sadly, he died of a heart attack in the post office
Yeah.
in Okemah in 1958. But just served a solid term, no real, except for switching parties, that probably was a little bit of an odd thing that might happen, but, all in all,
Pretty
Governor Phillips, he did a good job. Now, this next name, I feel like you guys are gonna recognize, Robert S. Kerr. Wow,
Legacy.
hope you can hear that lawnmower or whatever that is out there.
Service out there.
Sounds like a freight train coming by.
Uh-huh.
Robert S. Kerr he was not just an Oklahoma politician. He served time in Washington, D.C. representing the people of
Right.
Oklahoma, but he was, well integrated, well networked. Yeah, this picture of him and John F. Kennedy, I mean, people said,
They were,
Kennedy is the president, Kerr is the power, or something like that.
my,
I-
yes,
Yeah.
my great aunt was asked to go and cook for President Kennedy, but she refused because she didn't feel like it was too good, but Kerr asked her.
Really?
Yes, many
Yeah,
years ago.
Kennedy came to Oklahoma
Yes.
to visit
Uh-huh.
her at his ranch.
Mhm.
Anyway, he was born in a log cabin in the Chickasaw Nation,
In
And-
Indian territory. at
in,
the
yeah,
time.
in Indian
Mhm.
territory, and so he was the first governor to be born in.
The service governor that was
Yeah,
born.
born in,
Indian.
what, Indian territory, yeah, what became Oklahoma. Anyway, he inherited his parents' political and, religious convictions. He was a member of the Democratic Party and the First Baptist, or the Southern Baptist Church, for his whole life. And he was a teetotaler. He made that commitment when he was a young man to never drink alcohol, and he never did. And he taught Sunday school even while he was in public office. He was just a man of faith and
Right.
he was committed to that. He went to school in Ada, so he was born near there.
Yeah.
And,
Went to East Central Normal.
which
School.
probably became East Central University, ECU, over in Ada, yeah. Wanted to, practice law, so he borrowed $350 to finance a year of law
AU
school.
of Law.
Wow,
$350 for a whole year of
$350
law school
might be
at OU.
the price of an hour or Oklahoma Law
I didn't know
School
if you could get a book.
class. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
$350 does not go very far, but he got a whole year out of it. Anyway, when the money ran out, he sold magazines and began to hone his skills that would one day earn him the title, the uncrowned king of the Senate. Don't you wish you could have had a conversation with him? I mean, man, this guy must have just been something.
And he looks,
Yeah,
he looks like a happy, just
yeah,
normal, cordial,
yeah.
good
But
old
I mean, I believe he was well liked. You know, persuasive,
but not overbearing.
but not manipulative.
Right, yeah, there's a difference,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, he served as a second lieutenant during World War I. These guys are all of the age that they would have been wartime.
Mhm.
But he never saw combat.
Right.
Got married and then had some of the most tragic events
Oh.
happen.
It's horrible.
I
I
have,
mean, I have a frowny, sad face here
Yeah.
because some things happened.
so first of all, he was married. Well, okay, so he told his dad he had 3 goals in life. Family, become a millionaire, and become the governor of Oklahoma. So he got married, his wife had twin daughters, and they died.
Right.
Then,
In 1920s.
in 1920, and then in 1924, his wife, was having a baby boy, and they both died during childbirth.
And his produce business went up in flames in 1929.
Oh, yeah, the year after the twin daughters were born, then, yeah, his whole business
Yeah, went
burned up in
flames.
flames. I mean, man, but he just,
That was like in 20, 21, and 24.
yeah,
And then in 25, he started.
he
And-
remarried, and, they ended up with 4 children. So,
Right.
family, there's the first one. So he was practicing law, but on the side, he was kind of buying up oil and gas royalties and
Right.
things like that. And pretty soon, he just jumped into that
Yeah.
side of things.
Yeah.
And I don't
Became
know if
collaboration.
if he became a millionaire or not, but he became a very wealthy man.
Right, because he started in with Phillips Petroleum,
Yeah, and then Kerr McGee,
introduced him to
Yeah.
DMP,
Mhm.
and then there you have it.
yeah, there you have it. And
Kerr
you know
McGee
what,
was
Dean
born.
McGee and Robert S. Kerr both served the state of Oklahoma. I mean, they were well, Dean McGee is like a philanthropist, you know, with the Dean McGee Eye Institute and the Blood Institute and all those things. I mean, so, they weren't just oil barons,
Right.
they were givers too. Anyway, so then, I guess he just thought, well, you know,
Done that.
yeah, I've been there, done that,
Take that one
I'm
off.
gonna do politics now.
Right.
And, anyway, he dove in and hit it hard with state politics, and then, was, elected to the Democratic National Committee. And he just was like going on and on
Oh,
with
yeah.
all of those things.
See, he 30s began public service, special judge to the Oklahoma Supreme Court in 31, 35 as Governor Ernest Marlin's appointee to the
Yeah.
governor's unofficial pardon and parole board. By 1940, he was elected to the Democratic National Committee, and he also became the party's most influential fundraiser for more than 2 decades.
20+ years of raising money. And again, all that oil and gas industry, I'm sure he made a lot of connections,
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of friends, and
yeah.
had a way of convincing people to give.
And then in 42,
Keynote speaker at the Democratic National Convention. I was just like, wow, man, this guy made a climb, a very quick climb. When he was, okay, let's see, where does this say? Which one? Okay, yeah, he was, so in 42, he was elected governor. And, he was the one, when we talked about, Oklahoma Lakes, he was one of the main, governors who, got reservoirs built
Right.
here in Oklahoma. All these connections, the National Committee and all that stuff, roads, dams, military installations, and industrial projects, all as a result of, of his work and everything. And, it was like a new era in Oklahoma political history. All the things that, like the things we were talking about earlier, you know, the Ku Klux Klan had that strong influence during the first 10 governors. And, people just, I don't know, they did kind of.
Fearful.
Yes, exactly. And, well, they call this, he denounced like the Wild West rhetoric
Right.
that had been used. And, when his tenure ended, Oklahoma was debt-free and poised to take advantage of seemingly unlimited possibilities to develop and modernize through federal largesse in the post-war period. Some things have changed
Right.
since he was,
Yes.
since he left office.
There have been some things changed.
But anyway, so
Great
then,
accomplishments though were
Right.
made in strides while
Yeah.
he was governor.
but then he was elected to the U.S. Senate
In
in
48.
48, the following year. And get this, okay, his freshman class in the Senate had names like Hubert Humphrey and Lyndon Johnson. They came in
Same class.
at the same time, yeah, which is pretty impressive. And those guys, those senators made, like everything that happened, they had their finger in it for like the 50s and the 60s. Anyway, he continued working for the state of Oklahoma. Like, he learned, I think, how politics actually works with a lot of that.
Inner workings in there.
I scratch your back, you
Mhm.
scratch mine kind of
Right.
thing. So, someone from one state would need help getting some things done in there, and he's like, okay, and then you help Oklahoma.
Right.
And that's just the way
I help
politics
you, you
works.
help me.
Yeah, that's the way they do things. And, but Oklahoma was the beneficiary of those things.
Right.
He had real vision for our state, I think. He gained widespread recognition through leadership trying to exempt independent oil and gas producers from the Federal Power Commission regulation. You guys are aware that oil and gas industry in Oklahoma has received like favors, and they haven't always had to pay it's just like any other industry. You kind of offer tax exemptions and different free passes for things to get industry to come to your state.
Right.
That's another common thing that happens. And this kind of ended up as being a black mark for him to be elected president, and probably cost him the presidency. But so he just used the power that he had been garnering all those years and just stepped it up big time in the Senate. And he was Kennedy's shadow leader and would help get votes. Another thing they do is, okay, like other party people,
Yeah,
if you'll help us pass this through, then when you need this, we'll help you pass that through.
Right.
And
Kind of a
sometimes,
negotiator.
yeah, and sometimes the president wants something to happen, and so he gets the aid of these people that have a little more power, a little more
Connectivity.
yeah. Anyway, he eventually he had a very mild heart attack on January 1st, 1963 in Washington, D.C. and just never recovered. And he died from that. It seems very sad because he was, I guess he was about, I think, getting close to 70, 67. He wasn't really all that old, but anyway, when he died, John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson both came to Oklahoma for the service. And 63, that was the same year Kennedy died, in November of that same year. The funeral was at First Baptist Church in Oklahoma City. Thousands were unable to obtain seats and stood outside in the pouring rain and listened over a broadcast to the service. And
That's really how much he was loved. He was
Right.
sitting out in the rain.
exactly. One of his quotes is, "It is what we do over and above making a living that justifies the living and the opportunity for making the living." Anyway, I thought that was a great speech. And someone on the day of his burial said, "If Will Rogers was Oklahoma's most loved citizen, then Kerr was its most powerful." So, anyway, Robert S. Kerr. I just loved this picture because this is at his ranch in Oklahoma City. I thought that was a great picture, and this is just, he looks like the kind of guy you just want to have a chat with, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, the next governor was Roy Turner. This guy is also connected to a previous lesson that we've had here on Trail Talk. He was born near Kendrick, Oklahoma. His dad was a homesteader. While he was governor, he sponsored livestock exhibitions and judging contests for 4-H and FFA. He quit school and moved to Oklahoma City to attend a business university. Now, I don't know how you get into a business
Yeah.
university without leaving school, but
Different times, I guess.
yeah. And so he finished his formal education, went to World War I, and then started a career investing in Oklahoma, Texas, and Florida real estate.
Pretty widespread there.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Not sure how they've got a listing of houses. maybe.
Yeah, it says until financial reversals almost ruined him. Well, if you think about it, this was probably leading up to the Great Depression.
Oh,
Yeah. You know,
that's true. Yeah.
He actually had royalties in some oil-rich land, and so that's kind of what saved him.
He was
And-
full of that.
And then he built Hereford Heaven Ranch near Sulphur. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because it was home to Hasford Rupert 81st, the first $1 million bull, when we were talking about, yeah, the cattle breeds, cattle industry in Oklahoma.
We talked about it.
Yeah, Herefords have that super soft curly hair on their head, foreheads. But he lived on Hereford Heaven it's near Sulphur. It was near Sulphur, Oklahoma. So anyway, I thought that was a fun little fact. So he married, and he and his wife adopted twins, a boy and a girl. And his political, life started with the school board, right, election.
In 1939.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of those, let me try politics
Right,
a little bit
yeah.
on a low, kind of a lower level
Mhm.
type, yeah, see how this goes.
Test run.
And in 46, he ran for governor against Tulsa Republican Dixie Gilmore in igniting one of the state's most bitter gubernatorial campaigns. Now, this
Cut
is.
down and dirty.
Yeah, it did. So, Gilmer accused Turner of being affiliated with the Democratic state machine. I'm gonna call it the dark, or what is that what they call it?
I don't know what you're trying to say.
Dark money, or I
Dark
can't
web?
remember. No, anyway, people were saying this phrase, like in 2020. Gosh, I can't remember what they were called. Deep state. Like deep state kind of stuff. Anyway, associated with Governor Kerr, Oklahoma A&M president, which later became Oklahoma State, Henry G. Bennett, and State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Alvin Crable. Turner retaliated, calling Gilmer a mouthpiece for the money bag Tulsa Republicans. Them's fighting words. Anyway, he won, but not by very many. I mean, I did the calculation. He got 260,000 votes, and the other guy got like 225,000. So it was a little
Okay,
bit
yeah.
split.
Democrat won with 259,491.
Yeah,
The 486,917.
yeah. That was a pretty
Yeah.
tight race.
Right.
But his more notable accomplishments, reorganized fish and game tax and highway commissions, built highways and farm to market roads, which I hadn't even thought about.
The Major Toll Road.
Yeah, the Turner Turnpike,
from Tulsa.
named for him. But like farm to market,
Yeah.
that's, farmers were having to navigate probably really bad rutted roads to
Dirt,
try to get
gravel.
to a highway. And, how smart was that? I love that.
It took me forever till I realized growing up, I always thought FM on those signs meant like radio station.
Yeah.
And then whenever I was driving somewhere one time, it said, I had the Google going, telling me, and it said on my written directions, it said FM, and then it spoke it out farm to market. I was like, that's probably nice.
Yeah,
I mean, that was just a few years ago.
yeah. So there you have it, folks. When you see that, FM, farm to market, that's what those roads are. And those kind of got really pushed a lot during this time period of our state. So, but probably his biggest feat was the Turner Turnpike. And, he went to Washington a lot to kind of push that through, because you have to have federal funds to get something like that built.
Yeah. And the towns and everything involved.
Yeah, and then some towns were upset because there weren't exits at their places, which there are now.
Yeah.
Bristow and Stroud, you can exit at both of those locations. Anyway, the construction didn't start until his last year in office, but it did, and you guys have probably all, I'm sure, have written on that.
Yeah.
He was loyal to Harry Truman and the Democratic Party, and he was the national president of the Truman Barkley for President Club. So there you go. Anyway, just another friend of a bigger politician. When his campaign train ran short of money in Oklahoma, he raised enough funds for the future president to complete his journey. I don't know what that means exactly. I wonder if that's supposed to be Truman's campaign train. Ran
Might be.
short, yeah. And then he invited Turner to become the Secretary of Agriculture, but he declined.
Right.
But he just kept on. He wrote and sang country and western songs. Kind of this little side hustle there of singing music. and just kind of put up with some typical kinds of politician sort of things. Anyway, he returned to oil and cattle business, sold his oil interest. He was inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame and was a trustee at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, state chair for Crusade of Freedom and Young Men's Christian Association. Sold his ranch in 1963 to Winthrop Rockefeller. I don't know if that's from the Rockefeller. Yeah,
We're all familiar.
he moved to live at the Skirvin Hotel. That's
Yeah.
where he lived till he died.
Yeah, I thought that was strange too.
Mhm.
You know he had plenty of money.
They say the Skirvin is haunted.
I thought that too when I read that, and I was wondering if maybe he was one that,
I don't know. That's where LaQuincy Reed is. Maybe I should hit LaQuincy up and say, hey, have you met the ghost of?
have you met
Roy
old,
Turner?
Roy Turner in the halls?
I don't think the Skirvin likes people to talk about
I doubt it.
the ghost. Yeah, but anyway,
Hmm.
yeah. Okay, moving on.
Number
See you
14.
later, Hasford, Rupert. Johnston Murray. Now, if the last name Murray rings a bell, well, that's because Johnston is the son of Alfalfa Bill
Remember when
Murray.
we talked about him?
The, little bit,
Centric.
yeah, kind of, blazed his own trail.
He's in the name
Found-
of John as well.
Yeah, just did a lot of, did a lot of kind of the things that people might be puzzled
As
by
to why.
some of the things that he did. Yeah, but at any rate, he did serve as governor. But Johnston Murray, his son, was sworn into office by his father, which
That's kind of a
probably
cool
was
thing.
cool. He was born in the Chickasaw Nation, and his mother was 1/8 Chickasaw, making him the first Oklahoma governor of Indian descent. His family lived in Tishomingo,
Mhm.
and he was, well, I guess he was married and they had a child and divorced, and then he went to Bolivia. Remember, his dad went down to Bolivia
Mhm.
and established an agricultural colony, and so
He went with him.
this Murray, his son went down there with him. Now, this was after he had a child and divorced his wife. Then he comes back and decides he wants to take a run at being the governor.
Mhm.
And his opponent decided to use the divorce proceedings, saying that he had deserted his child. But then his ex-wife came forward and supported him. So that kind of fell through.
Right.
Anyway, he, as governor, his plans were to reduce state spending and reform state government, but that was thwarted by strained relations with state legislators. Now, that doesn't really, we don't really have much of an explanation of what those strained relationships
Right.
were.
Right.
But it's possible that, there was some residual from maybe his dad, a little bit, which at the Skirvin, I just remember this, they had these wooden carvings kind of up on these, they're like little gargoyle looking
Uh-huh.
things. And Alfalfa Bill Murray, they have 3 or 4 sets of them, and there's 2, they face each other, and nobody knows for sure who one of them is, but the other one is clearly Alfalfa Bill Murray. Yeah, these wooden kind of gargoyle things.
As long as they don't move.
I don't know, it was kind of funny, but anyway, so he couldn't run again,
Mhm.
the one
He
term.
served his
they-
term.
So his wife tried to make a run at becoming governor, and that fell through. Then their marriage ended in a bitter divorce. He got married again, but he was politically and financially ruined. He moved to Texas, worked for an oil well servicing company, a limousine service. Anyway, Oklahoma State Senator Gene Stipe saw him and suggested he come back and work as an attorney in Oklahoma, and that's ultimately what he did. He became a staff lawyer for the Oklahoma Department of Public Welfare. So interesting, Gene Stipe was from McAllister.
Okay.
He was, and Kevin's mom was in this car accident when Kevin was a teenager.
Okay.
And Gene Stipe was the attorney for the person who hit Kevin's mom.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And once again,
Yeah.
it's a small world.
It's a very small world, yeah. So, anyway, okay, so there we have Johnston Murray. Not quite as colorful life or personality as his father's, but you know what? He was elected governor, and I think this was the first father-son governor thing that we covered.
Back to back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're not back to back, but you know,
Yeah.
one generation after the
Yeah.
other.
Okay, and now Raymond Gary.
He
Y'all,
looks like a movie star.
I
Over
know.
here. Headshot.
This was his Hall of Fame. He was inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. This is his portrait
He
from
must have
that.
a palette right there.
Yeah, but I thought this was a cool nameplate.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, I like that picture. I thought he looked like a friendly, approachable fella
Mm-hmm.
in that picture. But this guy might be my favorite governor
He has
so
a lot.
far.
Yeah.
Very prestigious, and I mean a man of,
Many accomplishments.
yeah, but just like a fortitude. He had strong beliefs in some things and worked hard and was willing to risk his everything by using what he did for his platform. So, he was born south of Medill, 1908, oldest of 5 children, went to Medill High School, rode a horse 5 miles to school every day, and a neighbor girl rode most of that way with him, and after high school they got married.
As ladies.
So they spent a lot of days talking, riding horseback, I like that. Got a teaching certificate,
Right.
became a superintendent, and within 4 years had an A accreditation for all the schools under his, it says Marshall County superintendent, so I don't know if the superintendent thing was a little different in those days from what it is now, but I thought that sounded like, wow, he must have whipped those
Right.
schools in shape.
Right.
And had established a manufacturing company to make school and office furniture.
Mm-hmm.
Bought a commercial oil and gas company, and a 120-acre ranch outside Kingston that later grew to hundreds of acres. So, I guess he
Talk about
liked
building
him.
up jobs for the community there.
Yeah, for real. And Kingston is a very small town down by Lake.
They had tornadoes not long ago.
Yes, yeah, down by Eufaula, no, not Eufaula, the one, Texoma.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he decided to try politics.
Why
Of
not?
course. And he was a Democrat, like all the others have been. He lost in 1932 by 300 votes. That was close.
Yeah.
That was very close. And then 8 years later, he won handily. Anyway, it says he served for 14 years. Oh, and that was in the Senate.
Okay.
He served in the Senate for 14 years. He had a great expertise on appropriations, which is kind of like spreading out the money, appropriating
Right.
for money for this or
Right.
that. And he's had a deep desire to be governor. And he finished second to William Coe, the same guy who got kind of ugly with Johnston Murray. William Coe ran for governor 2 times and was defeated both times. I guess he maybe was the Republican running or something. But anyway, there was another bitter runoff. Mr. Coe, so sorry.
You gosh.
Yeah.
Once again.
But he gave an extemporaneous message that was instantly proclaimed to be one of the best speeches ever delivered before the legislature in 1955. So his first year in office. And his words were he wanted to focus his intent to integrate peacefully the state's schools, promote industry, and build roads. So he quickly introduced the Better School Amendments. And what that basically did is it set the table to integrate Oklahoma's public schools by, instead of having a 4 mil separate levy for black schools, it would have a 4 mil tax for all schools. And so that would make the schools want to integrate.
Right.
Because of this 4 mil tax levy that they would be receiving. And so by all school districts getting the funding, that would result in larger schools with better standards. He said that he staked the success or failure of his administration on it, but he was elated when the voters overwhelmingly voted yes to integrate the schools. Anyway, so Oklahoma became the only southern state to voluntarily begin to end segregation. Wow, that is so. Moreover, he abolished separate bathrooms and fountains at state buildings, and further, he ended segregation in the National Guard and the Crime Bureau. So, you know, we have taught about Ada Lois Scipio Fisher and Clara Luper, both civil rights activists,
Nonviolent.
right, black women who who really took a stand and brought change.
Really strong convictions.
Yes, and both from Oklahoma. So I thought, okay, how does this fall in the timeline of things happening for him coming into office and doing this? So Ada Lois Scipio Fisher took her fight to attend the University of Oklahoma School of Law to the Supreme Court of the United States in 1948. And they said, no matter what the Constitution of Oklahoma says, she should be allowed to have an equal education.
Right.
So Oklahoma OU was allowed to let her attend school there. Clara Luper led her first sit-in 10 years after that in 1958. So while he was governor, I have a feeling the NAACP, Clara Luper, other civil rights people in Oklahoma saw what that he had started the ball rolling, and it was time to act.
Right.
You know, it was time for her to be able to do something, and so 58 was when they went to the Cat's drugstore. That was for the first one. So I thought this was super smart too. So he secured legislation to create a Department of Commerce and Industry, and they had a governor and citizens advisory council. Anyway, they used this to promote agriculture and commercial opportunities, and used an official state magazine called Oklahoma Today, which I think is still a magazine today.
It makes I called Oklahoma or something, but yeah.
Yeah, and he used other promotions, and I thought, how smart he is marketing the state for industry, for commerce, and all that stuff. Man, this guy has got it together. There was another barrier where the state's dearth of good roads. Oh, that's something he attacked, and soon was appropriated $10 million to begin meeting his goal of 2,500 miles of new or renovated construction on roads. And before he left office, there was actually 4,000 miles of updated roads in the state of Oklahoma.
That needed to be updated.
Yeah, and he was able to get those done. He created the Water Resources Board, which is still so important in our state.
Yep.
I mean, it's like he could see into the future or something.
Crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, right in the middle was Oklahoma's 50th anniversary of being a state.
Semi-centennial.
Yeah, and so he was able to, he opened the exposition with a golden tomahawk. And he used that as a huge publicity thing.
Yeah, 19 countries.
Yeah, people from 19 countries and over 1.5 million visitors
I mean,
as a real, to come and see this tomahawk, I guess. His term brought increases in appropriations for common schools, higher education, old age assistance, highway patrol, mental health program, and hospitals. The serious reforms for the mentally ill soon made Oklahoma's program a model for the nation. Now, good on you, Raymond Gary, for bringing that. Shame on Oklahoma for allowing the mental health system to become what it
Is
has.
now.
Yeah, now I hate to say is, because it is on an upswing. Actually, Marcus McIntyre has been a real proponent for bringing change for mental health and really the health system of Oklahoma overall. And some things are changing. People who've been on a waiting list for years and years and years are getting service. I mean, a lot of things have changed, but for us to go in from being a model for the nation to what we were, is a sad turn of events. And so I'm really glad to see this thing picking up. Anyway, when he left office, it was acknowledged that his practical approach to politics and ability to compromise had ensured his successes. And I just feel like he's probably one of the most outstanding governors that we've ever had.
for sure.
This is one of those guys you're like, oh, why couldn't they have two drivers?
Right? I gotta get you around now.
Yeah,
Why do you
yeah,
have to
for
get rid of
sure. Anyway, he died in 1993. He lived a very long
Yeah.
life, and he was buried in Medill. When he died, Governor Henry Bellman, he was governor at the time, said Governor Gary, led the state through the initial integration era and successfully integrated our schools without any of the violence and complications that erupted in many of the southern states. So very proud of Governor Gary and all of these men.
They all
You
did
know,
exceptionally.
good, bad, so-so, you know, they all committed themselves to try to make Oklahoma better.
And we are where we are because of them.
That's exactly right. So anyway, thanks for joining us today. We'll pick this back up and learn some more about governors later on down the road. Tomorrow, Chris Deal, who is the president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Duncan, is going to join me. And we're going to talk about some things that have been happening, some things that are happening, maybe some things to come. The banquet last week. Chris probably won't want to talk about it, but he won an award. And so anyway, all of that is happening tomorrow.
3 o'clock.
Yeah, so be sure and join us.